Hello and welcome to Life Beyond the Numbers, the podcast for people who are curious about how to have a more fulfilling work life. We live in a world largely driven by numbers, logic and reason. But how we feel at work and about our work impacts us, our organisations and society. There is a relationship between the numbers of our organisations and the life beyond the numbers. I'm Susan Michrillon, your host. I've lived and worked in many countries. I've met people who love what they do and people who don't, people who bring their full selves to work and people who won't. But one thing that I've learned that is common to us all is that we are all unique and have unique experiences. And it's helpful to know that there are others who think like we do, or have had struggles too, or have gone where we want to go, or can show us things we didn't know. So join me and my guests as we place a lens on the human side of work life by sharing insights, stories and strategies to inspire you to let your uniqueness shine through. Hello and welcome to episode 140 of Life Beyond the Numbers, and this episode is going out it's going out first on Saturday, August 12th, 2023. And as I've said in the last few weeks, for those of you who are regular listeners, you'll know by now that I have slightly altered these weekly episodes to allow some extra time and space for a big project that I'm working on, leading beyond the numbers. And if this is your first time to listen to an episode of Life Beyond the Numbers, there are lots and lots of wonderful conversations available to have a listen to, and the conversations will be back again from next month. At least that is the plan. This week in my writing, it was all about making connections. And one of the big, in inverted commas, big connections I'm trying to make is between the balance sheet of an organisation and a person. I've made the connection already, but representing that connection in words and making it understandable and relatable, simple even, isn't always so easy. It's really easy to connect so many terms that we use in our life and that we use in business and within our organizations. So for example, as people, we have values. Maybe we don't always know our worth. We can profit from certain situations, and often we suffer a loss. Our body is taxed by so many daily encounters, and savouring some of our experiences can pay dividends for years. And one of my favourites, we are always a work in progress. And on it goes. There are so many connections to the words. And on my wall in the room that I write in, I've got two flip chart pages. One is the profit and loss account, and the other one is the balance sheet. And on that, it's got a load of post-its with various words like I've just talked about, representing some of the connections between people. And ultimately what I'm trying to get and bring out is the connection between the emotional state of people in a workplace that impacts the financial state of an organisation. It's been fun. It's even hard to say that actually because it hasn't all been fun, and this week was quite trying earlier in the week. I've played around with things and I've produced several different iterations of charts and diagrams and models. Some of them just failed outright. Some have been tweaked. And I guess looking back on the week, I can honestly say that every iteration, my concept becomes a little clearer and simpler. And it's trial and error. It's experimentation and failure. It's joy and frustration. It is everything together. And all of the time, I bring myself back to my motto throughout this endeavour, which is KISS. And I think I might have said this one before, but instead of keep it simple, stupid, it is keep it simple, Susan. And so everything is viewed through that lens of, is this simple enough to understand? And of course, there's also connections being made between the science and the research and the evidence of some of these concepts I'm trying to put on a page and stories in my own life. And stories have power. Stories are powerful. Stories are how humans connect to one another. And I'm still not ready to go into the story of my inner team in any detail. I kind of don't want to give them the airtime, to be honest. This week has been a bit challenging, as some of them were really doing their best to disconnect me from what was important to me and the task at hand. And if I had recorded this yesterday, I certainly wouldn't have sounded as chirpy, is that the right word? Or as upbeat as I am now. Connection also came up in a conversation this week about my work. And a discussion about being connected to other humans. How we form, forge, and maintain human connections. And how crucial that is in our ever-growing, seemingly disconnected world. Technology is a tool that enables us to connect and connect anywhere across the globe. But the connection, the true connection, is between the humans. And this reminded me of a speech that I made at Toastmasters during the pandemic about connection. And so, although I had a different speech lined up to go out this week, I decided to record this speech about a family event that took place during the pandemic when we were unable to all be together in person. I've no doubt it'll resonate with some of you listening. Wherever you are, remember to keep the connection open and stay connected to those you love. Until next week, thanks for listening. Ciao. When was the last time you were in touch with your loved ones? And do you know when the last time was that you touched? 20 years ago, I sat in a room with a group of strangers, connected only by the fact that we were all headed overseas as first-time aid volunteers. The facilitator was a lovely, worldly wise gentleman. And there are two pieces of advice that he gave that week that remain with me to this day and will forevermore, I believe. The first was to make sure, wherever you are, you take every opportunity to celebrate the big three of life, and that this was a sure way to immerse yourself in culture. He was, of course, referring to the 3 milestones of births and birthdays, deaths and funerals, and the expression of love, marriage. Great advice. But the second piece of advice he gave was quite profound, especially given what we've all just lived through. He said not to forget about touch, physical touch, because he felt that that was the most undervalued sense. Now I want to take you back even further to a family milestone, one that happened before I was even born. March 27th, 1971 to be exact, when Ted married Eilish, Dad and Mama. In 2021, we celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, their golden jubilee. Now I wonder, if you'd sat Eilish and Ted down in 1971 and asked them to imagine their 50th wedding anniversary celebration, what would they have come up with? Firstly, there's just no way they would ever imagine that they'd probably get to a 50th wedding anniversary. I mean, they were 25. They had never pictured themselves being 75. Would they have imagined that they would have 4 children, and one of whom would no longer be with us? And that they would have 4 grandchildren? Well, at the time, 3 with another due in June. Perhaps the strangest of all would have been the how and the where. That they would be sitting at their kitchen table with a device about the size of a hardcover book perched on a stand, connecting to their family through a screen. Even if physically disconnected because of a pandemic, touching one another's hearts, unable to physically touch. Yet this is exactly where we found ourselves. As Dad said, I hear we're all meeting in some place called Zoom. And at 3 p.m. on March 27th, 2021, I opened the Zoom room. And my brother and family joined shortly after, and then my sister and her 2 kids. We began to chat and reconnect. But wait, there's no sign of my parents. And at one point, one of us realises we should find out where they are. My sister, the youngest, volunteers. She phones home and you can hear her in the background chatting away. And you can overhear some of the words like Safari, Zoom, half screen, link. Meanwhile, the rest of us are making faces on the screen and the kids are eyeing the cakes. Before long, my 2.5-year-old niece jumps out of her chair and goes over to her mother, my sister, who is still on the phone, and says, in her sweet, childish way, "Are you coming to the party?" Honestly, that touched my heart. It was so damn cute. And in that moment, I wondered how much she knew about what was happening. She hadn't been in a physical room with my parents, her grandparents, since August 2019. When she was just 13 months old. That was the last time they held her close. She does connect with them, so she must know who they are. But maybe she just wanted cake. we abandoned Zoom and resorted to the good old reliable Skype. And finally, we're all connected and the celebration begins. There are stories, memories, discussions, fun, laughter, joy. There's the cakes and the candles, dancing and singing. It's non-stop. And my parents loved it. They loved that technology allowed us all to connect in one room, even when we couldn't touch. I felt so connected to my family, but something was still missing. I longed for their embrace. And after the call ended, we all messaged about how much fun it was, but that we all missed the hugs. We were not alone. Scientists have been investigating the benefits of touch, and evidence shows that we need touch as babies. We long for it as adults, and we fare much better with it in our lives as we age. Touch is an important, although perhaps undervalued, sense. So, maybe like me, you'll embrace the moment that you can embrace loved ones you've separated from. But in the meantime, do stay in touch to remain connected. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the paths we traversed on today's episode. If something rang through for you, be sure to let me know. Or maybe you can share this with someone in your life who would benefit from listening too. And if you enjoy helping others, I'd be so grateful if you would leave a review, so that people who might also be curious about their own life beyond the numbers can discover this podcast too.